Right, so, this video has been recommended to me from my chat, because apparently it's ass. Okay, I'll be straight up honest. They're like, Cap, you need to see this video. This guy, HC Casual, has some giga turbo ass retard takes. And apparently, I need to talk about it, because as you know, I am now a Wuthering Waves professional. Yes, I've done the new hologram 6s on day 2. I've now cleared TOA 30-30 multiple times. I'm like, I know what I'm talking about right now. I've gone from being the noob to the master, so now I am qualified to talk about combat and Wuthering Waves to some degree. So yeah, apparently this guy's shitting on wuwa, so it's my responsibility to shit on him back. It's my responsibility to shit on him back, and we're gonna do exactly that. So HC Casual, more like HC, you need to casually fuck off with your bad takes. We haven't even started and I'm insulting the dude. I don't even know who he is. I apologize. All right, let's go.
Hey, it's your resident combo-obsessed bestie, here to say, nah, the title isn't rage bait. I'm genuinely worried, because a few months ago, I would have said Wuthering Waves and Zenless were on equal footing when it comes to their combat. But that was around launch, before I had spent hundreds of hours with both games. Now, however, I'm not so sure, because I've been struggling with the fact that something about Wuthering Waves combat just doesn't feel quite right. My head says I should love Wuthering Waves a lot more than I do. I mean, in theory, it's right up my alley, but my heart has just never been in it. And I've had a single question.
It's okay to have a preference.
Drive me crazy for months. Like, why is it that even though on paper Wuthering Waves has more depth than ZZZ, in the practice the combat feels less cohesive? And the more I've thought about that gut feeling that something is wrong here, knowing myself and the lifetime I've spent playing games like these, I have to wonder if what's causing that feeling is the possibility that Zenless's combat is just flat out better than Wuthering Waves on some level. In so many other ways, Wuthering Waves is beyond brilliant. It's the Marvel Rivals, the Genshin's Overwatch. It's like everything I know I've been asking for years. It's certainly not a 10, and neither is Zenless, but Wuthering Waves is a very good game, and for a decent amount of my friends, honestly, I'd recommend it over Zenless. Because, you know, Zenless is great, obviously I'm a fan, but it's still way too much of a capital G gacha game, whereas wuwa is progressively feeling more like a game that just happens to be a gacha.
True! Okay, true. Wuthering Waves at the moment feels more like it's moving towards like a normal JRPG than it does like a gacha game, right? Which I think is a good thing. And I think it makes it very normie friendly, okay? I think it makes wuwa way more normie friendly than like a Hoyo game, right? Without a shadow of a doubt, okay? So that's fair, right? That's fair. I feel a lot of this is going to come down to a dude's personal preference and what characters he actually has, right? I think it's fair to say something like in wuwa, if you don't have, like, the best teams, the rotations could feel maybe a bit stiff. They might not flow as well as you think. You might have to do more tinkering for them to feel right, and it might not intrinsically make sense, you know what I mean? So I can understand why rotations in wuwa, if you don't have all the, you know, quote-unquote biz characters, might make it feel a little bit more painful to get like smooth and good rotations out the bat. So I could see why that could be a critique someone might have out the gate. But you know, I think this might be a preference issue, but let's see.
The fact that it's a vibrant open world as opposed to a menu simulator definitely helps, but I'm realizing the combat is maybe one of the biggest factors holding back some of its true potential. Which probably sounds wild to some of you, because Wuthering Waves combat does feel great and absolutely has more room for the kind of player expression that normally defines character action games. Well,
the dodges in wuwa feel so good. That is when they fucking work, okay? Sometimes, I'll be honest, I'm like, I heard the dodge sound, so why am I getting hit? That's happened a number of times. Maybe that's me playing on NA servers when I'm in fucking Wales, right? Who knows? Who knows, right? But wuwa dodges do feel pretty satisfying, and counters feel very satisfying in wuwa, like a lot.
While Zenless is a bit more limited. But have you ever heard the saying, constraints breed creativity? Sometimes the more limitations you have, the more innovative your solutions become, and the Zenless devs have made a few design decisions around their limitations that may be some of the most quietly innovative I've seen in any action game in years. Surprisingly, they've actually managed to find that rare balance between a high skill ceiling and a low skill floor with combat that can be fun and engaging for all skill levels. And that's something action games like this have always struggled with.
Proof?
More often than not, you get games that are so afraid of pushing away the casual audience they wind up feeling shallow like FF16, or are too overwhelming to be very approachable for the average gamer like Devil May Cry. I've been looking for the perfect gateway game for the longest time, a game that can introduce people to some of the unique satisfaction of stylish character action games, that can smooth over some of the less approachable edges to make it more welcoming for newcomers and casual fans of the genre, while not losing sight of what makes these games so much fun for those of us who love exploring.
Okay, Mr. K98, I know, right? I'm aware. Okay. Yep, I'm a silly Billy.
The depth in these combat sandboxes, and I think I may have finally found it in Zenless. While on the other hand, Wuthering Waves feels a bit lacking, which is where part of my concern comes from, because again,
Okay, why? Bro's saying a lot of points without saying like a why. He's just saying, I feel this, I think this, okay, proof, why? Listen, like, bro, you could start with a preface, going into something, but after like 2.5 minutes, I'm actually expecting you to say why.
I do like Wuthering Waves. It is a really good game, but the difference between a good game and a truly great one is often a matter of degrees. So even though I feel like Wuthering Waves isn't quite there yet, it's really hard to put a finger on precisely where it's coming up short. And it's been hard to say if I actually love what Wuthering Waves is, or simply what I think it has the potential to one day become. So part of me fears this could be yet another one of those action games that lingers on the
Oh my
edge of
god.
greatness
Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, you could include this in the main body of your discussion, or like as like a concluding point to the whole thing. Okay, get to the point now, motherfucker. Holy shit.
forever without ever truly living up to it, which would be tragic. But vague fears aren't really helpful, so it's time to get to the bottom of where the line is. Time to figure out what precisely separates good character action games from truly great ones. So hi, hello, Hecky G everyone, call me Casual. Welcome to the first in a series of videos where we'll be holding a magnifying glass up to the nuances of combat and two of the best and most accessible newcomers to grace the character action scene in years.
Welcome.
To determine who's truly got the sauce to be the next genre-defining legend. The fact that they both happen to be gacha games is, mildly painful, but so was Final Fantasy 16 and Bayo 3 for that matter, so beggars can't be choosers. But in a way, it does only make everything these games bring to the table with their combat all the more impressive, and I'll say now that I've started putting serious thought into answering the question of the hour, I've got a vague idea of what the answer might be, and it's not the one I expected. Funny enough, I think a lot of the biggest hiccups in Wuthering Waves
It's been 4 minutes. Did bro decide to chat GPT script write this? Did bro decide to chat GPT script write this to fill in time? Holy. Oh my god. Bro, I'm not kidding. This is the fucking Jordan Peterson of gacha gaming. Oh. Fuck, finally. Here we go, the actual fucking video. Now, we get into the actual meat of this video. I genuinely might cut a bunch of that out. In the actual slop react, we might cut all of that out.
In a lot of circumstances, cooldowns are there for the sake of balancing gameplay. They ensure players can't spam really powerful abilities constantly, but sometimes when it comes to character action games like Wuthering Waves in particular, they can also be an accessibility feature. One of the big barriers of entry with games like Devil May Cry is in a vacuum, handing a regular person the insanity that is Dante's 8-ish weapon moveset plus all his stances, his installs, and everything is like handing someone a blank piece of paper and saying, hey, draw me something cool. And that's so vague, most people wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, too many options can be paralyzing after all, so best case, you're just getting a lot of those S's people used to draw in middle school. Which is likely why when Ryota Suzuki, the design lead for Devil May Cry 5, went to work on Final Fantasy 16, he didn't just simplify things a little bit, he and his team shifted a lot of the traditional moveset to a series of cooldown abilities, reducing the amount players had to worry about at any given time. And that did come at a cost, which we'll get to in a moment, but I've seen a lot of feedback from people who could never quite wrap their head around DMC on how much fun they had with FF16, because not only is the moveset like a fifth of the size, but the cooldowns give you structure to play around. Instead of a blank piece of paper, cooldowns can be like a coloring.
Cooldowns can direct you to not just spam certain things. It can be intrinsic and the way that rotations come about. Like it makes sense that, oh, if I press this ability and it takes 9 seconds for me to recharge, then it makes sense. What can I fit in that 9 seconds of downtime to maximize my damage, right? Maybe I press this button, it does a certain skill that might buff me for a certain time. I could then use that time and use that buff somewhere else and maximize my damage. That's kind of really how a lot of point cooldowns are kind of made. Think of it like global cooldowns and MMOs, right? There's a certain number of time between each ability to press the next one. And some abilities have a longer cooldown time because if you were to spam it, it would just be overpowered as fuck, right? Rotation, cooldowns, yes, give birth to rotations and theory crafting, and also make sure that you don't spam OP abilities, right? Like in WoW, if I could spam all my heavy hitting abilities, like if I'm Demon Hunter and I press fucking I-beam every single time it resets on the global cooldown, it's gonna be dumb. It's gonna be silly, right? So that's why cooldowns exist for a reason. It stops you from spamming, it allows you to build rotations, and makes more complexity between teams, especially when you're in games that require, you know, teams and other characters to work together, right? It's important.
Book for combat. Cooldowns make it easier to build a clear order of operations to approach each fight with based on which abilities are on and off cooldown to keep the damage flowing in, and that's what a lot of people do in games like Wuthering Waves. And in this case in particular, I'd argue that's clearly what the devs want us to do, because Wuthering Waves cooldowns are like tightly wound, synchronized clocks, and characters are very clearly balanced with how their cooldowns will match up with the rest of their team, as well as the kind of enemies you'll be fighting in mind. So as long as you're following a combo rotation, your skills will more or less be available whenever you need them, avoiding a massive...
Yes, rotations exist in wuwa, and they're extremely important. Yes. I think we'd all be lying if we said rotations didn't matter in wuwa. Rotations absolutely matter in wuwa. I feel like it's part of the core combat in wuwa is rotations. Just like in an MMO, your rotations is important. You could change it slightly depending on who you're facing or what you're facing, but they're important.
This pitfall a lot of other action games that integrate too many cooldowns fall into. You see, in a lot of games like Relink and FF16, often the balance feels way off. The cooldowns take forever to refresh and enemies are fairly tanky, so you wind up spending a lot of your time basic attacking while you sit around twiddling your thumbs waiting on all your timers.
Arknight's Enfield.
The cooldowns are so long that they heavily discourage using your abilities when you want to and encourage
Arknight's Enfield doesn't have, like, ability cooldown. Instead, they have the SP system, where, like, you have to wait for SP to recharge, or do combos, or do skills to regenerate SP inherently, right? So in Enfield, you don't really have cooldowns, you just have to wait for SP, which is like, it's more like a global cooldown, right? In that sense. Your SP actually becomes more like a global cooldown than it is like an energy system, to be honest.
Saving them for when you might need to later. And this is where I really do have a lot of appreciation for the way Wuthering Waves handles theirs. I mean, I would certainly prefer it if a lot of these cooldowns were shorter. Like, please, just cut the grappling hook in half, right? But I think there is a decent balance between abilities that require cooldowns like character skills, ultimates, and echoes, and abilities powered by resource generation like Forte skills. The Forte skills in particular being one of this game's master strokes, because giving each and every character their own unique mechanic like Sanhwa's rhythm minigame,
Forte is really cool,
so you're not just passively waiting on cooldowns, and each character has their own goals to accomplish to an extent. Which is why when it comes to just casually roaming the open world, I think the cooldowns aren't really the biggest issue. I mean, certainly not in the way they are in Final Fantasy, aside from how Concerto kind of throws a wrench in everything, which we'll get into another time. But like, aside from that, I think the open world casual combat loop is a lot of fun. It's really strong.
Did he get quieter?
Left plenty of room for variety and flexibility when it comes to skill expression. The problem is, it all kind of falls apart as soon as you want or need to play efficiently on any level. Very broadly speaking, in gacha games, there's generally two types of combat encounters. Casual ones, where as long as you have the bare minimum stats and know how to play the game, you have nothing to really worry about, like the average open world fight. And serious ones where even if you have the gear, you'll need to fully utilize the potential of your entire team to get the job done, like you'll see in most in-game activities in lengthier elite and boss encounters. Now, if you're anything like me, a primarily free-to-
Okay, I hope the dude is gonna go down the logical route that I'm thinking that is a valid criticism of wuwa. Because to me, a valid criticism of wuwa is like, if you're fighting in the overworld is very different from fighting in TOA, right? Because in TOA, you start off with 0 concerto, and you start off with your ult abilities, right? Which means that you could do rotations from 0 to 100, right? As intended, right? But that's not the case in the overworld. You're not gonna have full energy. You're gonna have mixed concertos, mixed fortes. You're not gonna do rotations perfectly because your characters don't start out like that, right? You don't start out like that. So I think it's fair to say in overworld, yes, the combat can feel a bit more clunky because you're not starting out from doing perfect rotations every time. But it doesn't really fucking matter, right? That doesn't matter because things die so quickly anyway in overworld when you're at that point. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. I think the only time when it's a problem, I think we could all agree, is fucking holograms. It resets our energy when we die, and it's annoying, okay? Either give us all our energy or none, right? I think that's a valid criticism. But to say like maybe the difference between doing TOA combat and like overworld combat might feel a bit more clunky is because rotations are, you know, a little bit more different, right? You can't play in the exact same way because you're going to be at a different spot in position. That's like, I think is a valid thing to say, but I don't think that's what this guy is going to do. I have a feeling that's not what he's going to say. But again, it doesn't matter. It's overworld. Things die anyway. Anyway, you can fucking kill anything with any character in overworld.
To play player who doesn't have character duplicates or a ton of shiny premium weapons and hasn't had the best of luck gambling for stats, you'll know that for those more serious fights, efficiency is beyond crucial because odds are one way or another you're likely going into them at a slight disadvantage. Which is where the problem stems from, because you know how I mentioned Wuthering Waves cooldowns are tightly wound, so if they're using an entire team effectively, the abilities you need will more or less be off cooldown when you need them? The problem is the cooldowns are actually a little too tightly wound, so if you don't follow a rotation, hell, even if you spend too much time dodging or parrying attacks, you can easily ruin your entire damage output. You may have noticed in a lot of the footage I've shown you today, every time I need to deal proper damage, fights start to look kinda samey to the point where, from a gameplay perspective, they somewhat blend together. It's the same loop of Carlotta into Shorekeeper.
I mean that's a rotation, right? Like that's a rotation. Hey, when I'm playing WoW, every time I approach a fight, I'm thinking one or two things. Is this a one enemy situation or is this a 3+ enemy situation? Okay, 1+ enemy, I'm using this rotation. If it's 3+, I'm using this one. Like that's it. And then I will just carry out the rotation. That's how these games work.
Into Yang Yang, back to Carlotta, and repeat with like minor variations based on where my concerto is at or if I'm starting to fight without my ults ready. And I have to finish that rotation relatively quickly or I'll miss out on a pretty sizable chunk of my damage, resulting in the exact same problem that makes Genshin Impact's combat kind of a snooze fest. Because being effective requires using all your cooldowns in a fairly strict order of operations, requiring you to use a fairly strict rotation to properly line up all your buffs and whatnot, I more or less know what every fight is going to look like before it even starts, and as a result, combat starts to feel kind of repetitive. Especially considering this is a game where you're usually going to be highly reliant on your buffs for dealing damage, and many of those buffs have their own cooldowns attached. Not to mention, a lot of those buffs can only be passed to the next character coming on field, or they tend to get lost as soon as that character swaps back off field, and the game rarely shows you all of your active.
I'll be real, sometimes buffs getting lost like that can be really annoying, right? Buff loss is kind of a pain in the ass. It can be at the point where it's frustrating.
Buffs in the first place, making them hard to keep track of. I don't know about—
Guys, I'm trying to find some positives in what he's saying. I'm not trying to be entirely critical. I'm trying to approach this in good faith and try and actually agree and point out points that I can kind of reasonably agree with, or maybe add on to his point to make it a bit more agreeable. But yeah.
About you, but I don't want to have to keep tabs of a bunch of invisible timers in my head while I'm trying to go toe-to-toe with Crownless. So at all times, I feel like kind of boxed in by the devs because they just insist you approach fights with relatively rigid combos and strategies if you want to do well. To be fair, there's absolutely more nuance to the rotation.
With TOA, that's absolutely the case. I think TOA is made to practice your rotations. That's why they give you full ults. Right? Full liberations, in my opinion.
And Wuthering Waves than there is in Genshin, and I've got a lot of love and respect for how much additional—
The buffs show above the forte? I mean, sure, but that's not the point he's making, right? Well, yeah, he doesn't have to keep, like, an imaginary, like, time. It could be, like, a skill cooldown, right? Like, how many seconds from using a skill is it back up again? Like, he doesn't want to have to look. But I know with buffs, you can just look at your forte and see how long left it has, sure.
Room there is for player expression when it comes to creating your own rotation that suits your personal playstyle preference as opposed to purely what's—
That's annoying to pay attention to. Again, I hate comparing it to MMOs, but you'd hate an MMO. Having to keep check on like small icons and small bars underneath your like health pools. We're used to that, you know? I'm used to that.
Most optimal. For example, even though I love Yang Yang, she's not Carlotta's ideal partner, but because she's one of my favorite characters, I'm able to comfortably shift the—
Oh, that's the problem. Oh, guys, we found the problem. Yap Yap is one of his favorite characters. Oh, we're so fucked. Oh, we're so fucked. That explains it. That explains it. Oh, my. Oh. Blech. Yap Yap. Oh, fuck me.
The way I use my Carlotta to adapt to integrating Yang squared into my rotations. That's great, but it doesn't make the core experience any less repetitive. You still kind of have to follow a rotation, you just have more options when it comes to finding your own. So I mean, it will take...
Bro just said the rotations can feel samey and boring, but at the same time, you could swap out characters to make it a little bit different, but they're still samey and boring. And that's one of the good things with wuwa, is you can swap in and out a bunch of characters, adjust your rotations, and they'll still work. That's one of the good things, is you can have that variety. You can have that variety in the game, and it will still work. And you'll still find ways to make it work. And that's kind of the beauty of wuwa, to be honest.
Take longer to get bored of, but I don't entirely hate cooldowns in theory, and I don't think they're all bad even in this game, but the closer I look, the harder it feels to ignore all the stifled potential for variety and moment-to-moment gameplay, largely driven by all the, in my opinion, unnecessary limitations in Wuthering Waves, especially the...
Okay, let's think about the opposite. He needs to be specific, right? What cooldowns are bad? Like, can you give us an actual example of, hey, this cooldown for this ability I think is a bit jank and makes the combat feel not smooth to me. If we got rid of it or shortened it, the result would be this, which means the combat would feel better, and I think this would be an improvement. That's what he needs to do right now. He needs to be like, okay, I've said these cooldowns are bad in general. Okay, give us a specific, right? In the combat. Give us an example, and then maybe we could agree with you, but like, yeah, you know what? Actually, if that was reduced by like half, it would open up like a new level of play that would be kind of cool. Give us something that we could agree with and we could objectively see. Otherwise, right now, it's just like, I feel this would be okay. Give us an example. It's hard to, like, agree when we don't see any grapple. Oh, my God. like, grapple don't mean shit. The grapple don't... Like, sure, I'd love a 0 cooldown grapple. Or, like, maybe 1. Like, we can't spam it more than once in a row. We have to land it, then we can immediately grapple again or something. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that. That's fine. Grapple would make Jits even more OP. But I think in this instance, we need to, like, see a specific example.
The cooldown. And since I've been playing a lot of not just ZZZ.
Because otherwise, what? We could just spam all our all our, like, skills. Because liberations require energy, right? We can't spam that. That's not necessarily, like, a cooldown. That's, like, more of an energy requirement, right? We could talk about energy requirements, how that feels to play in games. Sure. We could talk about Concerto and how our fortes work. Sure. But cooldowns? What? We're referring to, like, skill cooldowns? Okay. So what? I have my G on at S5. I have 2 Tempest Lance recharges. I think take, what, 10, 15 seconds to recharge per one? And I have 2. So, like, what? You think that that should be reduced and it would make the game better? Like, what are we saying? Like, making a change like that would dramatically change a whole character's kit and their worth compared to other characters, right? Some characters with shorter cooldowns will make them extremely more viable and valuable than others, and that balancing would be insane. So, like, I feel like we need specifics, okay? I want him to give some specific.
But PoE, I can't help but think about how much more fun Wuthering Waves would be.
Energy is just a way to make sure you don't spam your abilities. Exactly, it's like another kind of cooldown. It's all different versions of cooldowns. Concerto, energy regen, physical, like number cooldowns are all just a type of cooldown at the end of the day.
Be if they traded most of the cooldowns for resource-backed systems like special energy or mana. Because the thing about cooldown...
Bro wants mana system? Bro, even in WoW, we have a mana system, but the abilities still have cooldowns. Abilities still have cooldowns. You can't spam. I can't spam fucking I-beam every time I want to, right?
Is more often than not, they wind up removing a certain layer of player choice. Because you can use abilities freely in PoE as long as you have the mana, your choices are much more about which abilities to use when based on your personal preference, playstyle, and the situation at hand, not just how they support your...
This is fair, right? Because in PoE, you're playing as, like, correct me if I'm wrong, you're playing as, like, one character. You're playing as one character that could do multiple different things. Just like, right, again, I'm comparing it to MMOs. In an MMO, You can play as any character or any class, and all those classes will have various different abilities to handle various different circumstances, whether it's a single target enemy, whether it's a group of enemies, whether it's like a boss. You can have different ways of approaching it, right? Because you spend all that time into like one character. In a game like Wuthering Waves, the whole point is you have multiple characters to make a team. It's the team unit, the team synergy that goes against whatever scenario you're planning for, right? It's the whole team that makes the whole thing work. Not the one character, it's the whole team. And I feel like he wants certain characters and teams to act like a MMO class would, or something in Path of Exile, which doesn't really make sense, right? If you're going into a fight and you know, oh hey, it's Inferno Rider, the boss is gonna move around a lot, you're probably really not gonna bring in a team that's like Camellia, right? That doesn't deal well with enemies moving around a lot, right? You're not gonna do that because that team isn't really as best equipped for this. So you'll bring in another team that can do it better, right? Whereas in an MMO situation, you could be like, okay, instead of using my, these kind of abilities that means I have to stay in place and cast them, I'll have to use ones that I can use while running around, right? That's how it works, right? That's how it works. But gacha games is all about teams and team synergies and how they work best. Kuro did a good job developing characters where in rotations you really need to filler to wait for your cooldowns. Exactly, that's so true. That's very true.
DPS. And so despite the fact that I'm often using the same
because, again, it's all about the whole team. It's not about the one character.
set of
If you just have one character, that one character is going to have to be able to adapt to every situation. That's not how it works in WoW.
6 or 7 abilities, every fight still looks and feels fresh because the way I use those abilities is constantly shifting because mana gives you the gameplay flexibility to allow for that, instead of focusing purely on output, and so does special energy. The fact that this is a resource and I'm constantly making decisions not just about how to spend it, but also how to regain it is a crucial element of the decision making that keeps games like this fun long term.
Okay, so you're worried about how to regain special energy, not how to, like, spend it. I think that's different, right? Because rather than adapting to the enemies that you see, you have to adapt to, oh, what makes me get my energy back quickest, right? I feel that's kind of going against what he's saying a little bit, right? You're looking at ways to regain that energy so you could do more damage quicker, rather than what is the enemy doing and doing it to me.
In my opinion. Whether we're talking about combo-centric games like Devil May Cry or
it literally goes against to what he just said.
RPGs like Path of Exile, in my opinion, one of the big differentiators between a quality experience I'll keep coming back to for years and something I know I'll wind up putting down one day out of boredom is a degree of nuance and decision-making in combat, not just at the start of every fight, but in every single button press before you finish it. In almost every video I've made so far, I've talked about how much I love the fact that Zenless is a game about combo routes, not rotations. If I go into 10 fights with one of my Miyabi Yanagi teams, all 10 are going to play out very differently because I'll be making different decisions in each and every single one, largely thanks to the fact that a resource like special energy allows for more situational decision making than cooldowns do. Throughout every fight, I'm making decisions like which stance to use with Yanagi, not just driven by my buffs, but based on which is best suited to countering the enemy in front of me. I'm using Bernice's special attack not just for damage and anomaly buildup, but for the sake of dancing in and out of the iframes to keep my characters safe. I'm priming bosses with Miyabi, prepping them so I can guarantee a freeze right before they would recover from stun so I can give myself enough.
I feel like though with WoW, this could also like apply, right? Especially like if we're talking about holograms or fallacies, right? You have to think more about when you're timing some skills, some of your ults. Like think of the fight fallacy, right? Fallacy of no return. You really kind of want to wait to break him until he's flying or just about to fly, right? To bring him down. So you might have to withhold some ults, withhold some abilities to make sure you can time it right. You know what I mean? I think there's still a lot of situational stuff with WoW that makes sense, right? Like, even the last TOE that we just did, it's like, hey, actually, maybe you should change your Camellia, like, from her Blossom stance to a normal Whitehead stance when the monkey's down, because it'll do more damage to it. Like, you still have to change how you play, depending what the bosses do. So I don't really know what we're kind of saying with that. You definitely can change things up depending what you fight in WoW. I think that's very true.
time to land a second tactical nuke and close out the fight. And for better or for worse, I think this stun DPS phase is kind of the perfect example of where the core difference between Wuthering Waves and Zenless is, because the stun DPS phase is where Zenless's combos can also get a lot more rigid. You've got a very small window of time to dish out the bulk of your damage after all, and so especially with burst DPS characters like Julian, you kinda have to use fairly static combos to be effective. But that's a very brief, I don't know, 10-ish second window of time, and everything about the rest of the fight is still constantly shifting. Not to mention how much additional variety there is in deciding which combo route to use during stun on the fly, based on things like how close you are to freeze, for example, or what phase of the fight you're in. And the problem with Wuthering Waves is that to an extent, entire fights feel like that stun DPS phase, but with less nuance, low-key. They're just a matter of pressing the right buttons in the same order as you always do when the enemy you're fighting and their moveset is almost an afterthought as long as you're properly babysitting your cooldowns in Concerto, which is a big part of the reason.
I mean, there's some level of truth to it, right? Like, we saw the guy, hi Rainy, we saw the guy recently who did, I think it was Tower of Adversity, completely blindfolded using like quick swapping. And all he did was just do the rotations, and the things died. So I think that's true, right? You could just blindfold, do the rotations, what you know, then what your characters are built, and things will die. That's true. I'm sure that's also true for ZZZ. You could blindfold yourself, just do all your rotations, and things will eventually die. Right? So sure, but is that a bad thing?
You're not going to see me quick swapping like Wallenstein anytime soon, because if you're a high skilled player, the input complexity is kind of a non-issue, right? Because
try to do that against the hologram. Oh, I agree, because holograms one-shot you, so it's far harder to do. Far harder to do, and you'll just have to go based off luck, right? Of course, it doesn't. That's why I like holograms more than TOA.
this is a fairly simplistic game at the end of the day. But as soon as you clear that barrier of entry, quick swapping trivializes fights even further, because whatever the enemy is doing really doesn't matter. If they're even allowed to move in between all the time slows and freezes, the way swapping tends to reposition you.
Oh yeah, that's true, actually. What, he's fighting level 80, and he's underleveled for level 80s? Are we gonna be a St. Totus fucking B-roll watcher?
Out of the range of attacks on top of all the iframes you get from playing like that mean that as long as you can execute your rotation, there are very few enemies that can really do much to stop you, to the point where realistically speaking, I bet you could easily just blindfold yourself and just roll most bosses that don't have random invulnerability phases as long as your rotation is on point.
That is just not true for holograms. That is just not true for holograms. Like, that's just not. Isn't that also true for just every fucking gacha game? Isn't that true? Like, yes, have busted characters, do rotations, things die. Congratulations, we played a fucking gacha game. Why are we singling out wuwa?
And after writing that, I looked that up because I was curious.
He has said he has 3 accounts that he plays on.
And yeah, it does seem.
That's why his is underleveled. Then why did he choose the underleveled character or underleveled account to prove this on?
Pretty easy. Like, look at how little the boss fallacy moves. Like, no shade to the creator, it's a cool video, homie is very good at the game, bravo, but everything about this clip is just painful. Because this is exactly why I rarely feel engaged with fights tactically in the same way I am in a game like ZZZ or PoE, and on some level it often just feels like I'm going through the—
Someone literally did this with ZZZ. What are we saying? Someone literally did this with ZZZ. Like—
motions in wuwa. Like, have you ever been watching like some shonen anime where a couple of bros bond over having a conversation with their fist? As silly as it may sound, at face value, I do think a good fight is a lot like a good conversation, and good conversations require input from both sides. With that in mind, ZZZ's gameplay feels like a really engaging push and pull, a heated back and forth debate between you and the enemy. Whereas Wuthering Waves feels—
Don't the enemies like barely fight back in ZZZ? What do you mean push and pull? The enemies don't really fight back that much. It's just about like how much can you stun them and do as much damage as possible to them very quickly.
Feels like giving a TED talk. Like, hey, maybe it's a really good speech, but it's still mostly a one-sided monologue, so there isn't like a single boss I enjoy fighting half as much as Shadow Jane, one of the best conversationalists in the game. So as a—
Also, guys, as in comments, his PC cannot handle wuwa that well. Huh? literally his own B-roll enemies are standing still the same amount. Like, you could do more attacks per second to the enemies. It could feel faster. I can understand why, like, fast combat equals, like, fun. Sure, that could be engaging. It feels like you're doing a lot. But when all you have to do is, like, dodge every now and then for 1 or 2 attacks, it's like, what are we doing here, right? Because in wuwa, not every attack is parryable. Whereas I think you could parry almost, or dodge, or parry dodge counter, like, every attack that comes at you in ZZZ, right?
The result.
You just have to listen for the audio cue and dodge. Am I wrong? Can someone correct me if I'm wrong? In ZZZ, all you have to do is wait for the sound and then you dodge. Am I wrong in saying that? Or can other things like hit you? So you just, yes, okay, so you just listen for sound and then dodge. Whereas in wuwa, there's more than just the dodge sound you have to watch out for. Pretty much. Okay, got it. That's wild then. So you have to be more reactive in combat in wuwa than in ZZZ inherently. Because you could just listen to audio cues in ZZZ. Wild.
Of all this, from a combat perspective, Wuthering Waves just feels kind of dull in comparison to ZZZ because the push and pull, the friction isn't really there as soon as.
Then this is just like not true. Then there's literally more push and pull in wuwa. Because not every attack you could parry. So you have to be more aware and be like, oh, I have to like actually dodge this visually by what I see, visually by what the enemy is doing. That's push and pull. In ZZZ, oh, I heard the I should dodge now sound and then I dodge. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just the way that the combat is. But to say that wuwa is less push and pull is wild.
The enemy you're fighting and how they choose to respond to your attacks is so much less relevant to your success than simply executing a pristine combo.
Huh? If you don't dodge the attacks, you're dead.
Rotation. In the past, I've mentioned.
Notice how in his wuwa clips, he has his HP and level cropped when he's demonstrating the combat. Why is he doing that? Why is he doing that?
It's relevant to your.
Is it to avoid the Satotus B-roll watcher? Ooh. Ooh.
Your success than simply executing a pristine combo.
He showed the level of the other one last time.
Rotation. In the past, I've mentioned one of the guiding game design principles that helped the devs behind Ghost of Tsushima deliver one of the best gaming experiences in history, in my opinion. And I highly recommend their GDC talk. It's a brilliant discussion on what goes into making top-tier melee combat, but one of the parts of that talk that has stuck with me the most over the years was what they described as their #1 rule when it comes to making world-class games. The most effective way to play should be the most enjoyable way to play, and all too often in Wuthering Waves, managing your cooldowns is such a significant priority, it unironically feels more effective to ignore the enemy in front of you to an extent and just focus on your rotation to optimize your cooldowns and concerto instead. Because if you waste too much time dodging, fishing for parries, or trying to mix up your combos, you'll ruin your damage.
Parrying is one of the best things you can do in wuwa. What is... Huh? Literally parrying and dodge countering is an incredible way to either break enemies or gain concerto. Or energy. Like, what is... Huh? Did we really just say, like, perfect dodging and parrying is bad? Did we really just say that? Wait, do we actually just say that? Wait, let me... Can I rehear that? Wait, let me just... I hope he didn't say that.
To an extent, and just focus on your rotation to optimize your cooldowns and concerto instead. Because if you waste too much time dodging, fishing for parries, or
wasting time dodging and fishing for parries. Wasting time dodging and fishing for parries. Okay, so fishing for parries and dodging, how is that a waste of time? That's literally a way to, like, increase your overall DPS. That one sentence right there, that's just blown my mind. I'm sorry. How can we take this seriously after that one sentence? Oh, yeah, if I'm wasting time dodging and fishing for parries?
My name's
Centantis.
I'm a biologist with a passion for
Fishing for parries.
In a game where dodging and fishing for parries literally helps you do better. It literally makes you play better. You can kill bosses quicker by doing that. So please, tell me, how is that a waste of time? What? Holy fuck. What? Huh? So first, wuwa doesn't give it a push or pull. And then when we go, actually, having to dodge more than, having to like react to bosses' movesets, more than just the, you know, sound cue parries. You actually have to look at the boss's like attack patterns and dodge them. That makes it more push and pull. Oh no. That's wasting time dodging and parrying. You say you want more push and pull? Yeah, the actual push and pull you say is a waste of fucking time. Please make your mind up. Please make your fucking mind up. What are you talking about?
Trying to mix up your combos, you'll ruin your damage. And in my mind, that's as much of a design failure for a character action game like this as an open world that locks movement behind paywalls, making it a chore to explore, so you wind up fast traveling everywhere.
That's just ruined his whole entire argument for me. I'm sorry. He was supposed to talk about fucking cooldowns, and now we're talking about dodging and parrying? The fuck?
In fact,
is bro okay?
if you're a high-skilled player, a lot of fights may as well just be like putting the god of chess, Magnus Carlsen, in a room with like some random member of the local high school chess club. A student might be pretty good, who knows, but they're like never gonna be able to keep up with one of the best to ever play the game. Lord knows before they even sat down.
Why is Magnus Carlsen mentioned? What point is he trying to make? Huh?
High-skilled player, a lot of fights may as well just be like putting the god of chess, Magnus Carlsen, in a room with like some random member of the local high school chess club.
Okay, sure. You know your perfect rotations. You have amazing echoes. Yes, you steamroll content. Welcome to a fucking gacha game. That's the same with any of the gacha games, not just wuwa. The fuck?
A student might be pretty good, who knows, but they're like never.
We're supposed to be talking about fucking cooldowns. Why are we talking about chess? Oh my god. Yeah, actually guys, when I play wuwa, I like to open up my intro with the Queen's Gambit. Sorry guys, I do the Queen's Gambit opening. That's kind of what I go for. Yeah, I like to go for the shit piss fart intro in my playstyle with this, you know what I mean? I like to make sure that I castle my king on my third rotation. You know what I mean? Fucking... The fuck are we talking about? What are we saying? What are we saying?
We're gonna be able to keep up with one of the best to ever play the game. Lord knows before they even sat down, Carlsen probably already had every move he needed to secure a win mapped out in his head, and more likely than not, within the first two.
Ah, yes, I am the Magnus Carlsen of wuwa. I'm always 50 moves ahead, and I can recall every button that I pressed for the last 20 rotations that I did. The fuck do you mean, bro? We just pressed the fucking buttons. That's it.
Moves, the game is effectively over already. It's
Castle equals rook and king, swap back, yeah, exactly. I gotta do the swap back, knight to e4.
just a matter of him
The pieces can't move the same whole board with a single turn. Oh shit, fuck! You're right. Ah, you're so right.
finishing it. Not to imply I'm like even vaguely close to a Carlsen level of skill when it comes to my gaming ability, but the guy's been on my mind lately. Partially because there's been drama at the chess championships. Yes, I am a nerd, shut up. But also because...
Okay, if you're a nerd, then at least think about your fucking takes better. Holy shit. If you're a nerd and you're supposed to be smart, please come up with more intelligent fucking arguments. I'm a dumbass, right? Everyone thinks I'm a literal retard, okay? Everyone thinks I'm a literal retard, okay? Despite the fact I went to uni for literal science, okay? Everyone thinks I'm a retard. Doesn't matter. And even I know that this is a dumbass take. Even I know this is a dumbass take. And I'm supposed to be the retarded one.
His stance on the state of competitive chess really resonates with the core of my issue with Wuthering Waves combat, because for years, my guy's been walking around saying stuff like this.
almost since day one. One of my.
Bro, what the fuck are we talking about, Magnus? Does he want to suck off Magnus Carlsen? Is he that much of a fucking fanboy who'll use any reason to, like, put him in this video? Fucking oh my god, I love chess. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about Magnus Carlsen in a fucking wuwa video. Like, are we choking on this guy's fucking dick? Like, what are we doing?
And you're like, why am I spending all this time playing classical chess, which I just find, you know, stressful and boring, but, you know.
And now, at face value, that might be a bit surprising to hear from the man who's effectively been the king of chess for like the past decade, and I wouldn't blame you if you just assumed he was, you know, just tired and burnt out from playing chess his entire life. But that's not really what he's getting at. You see, he's saying all that because classical chess specifically kinda just sucks in a lot of ways. It's a slow, monotonous slog where if you're good enough, everything is predictable to an extent, which I think is why Carlsen described it as stressful, because that level of predictability puts an expectation on you, even if it's a personal one, to perform perfectly, because you know that's like, you know, there's always going to be a right answer, and if you're good enough, you should be able to find it. And I think that's a big part of why Carlsen has been a major advocate for playing different kinds of chess.
Oh my god, stop comparing chess to Wuthering Waves. Stop comparing chess to Wuthering Waves. Holy fuck.
Like Fischer Random, where entire backline positioning is shifted around, and when talking about it not that long ago, he said this.
Hey, guess what? If you find it boring, there are other game modes to play. Just play more game modes of go play Elusive Realm. Go play Elusive Realm instead. Maybe you'll be happy. Maybe you'll enjoy it. You know what? You play Elusive Realm, you can get to the point where you have no fucking cooldowns at all, bro. You can have none. Maybe you'll have fun then, you know? Play the things that make you feel happy, you know?
What we're playing is in many ways a purer long-form game than normal classical chess, because you're sitting down at the board and you have to think about it from the very beginning, and it just feels fresh. And that really resonated with me, because that's exactly how I feel about Zenless in comparison to games like Wuthering.
He could not have come up with more pretentious argument. Chess. I'm gonna compare Wuthering Waves to chess, such a high-skilled game. I think chess is the worst fucking comparison to make, because chess frustrates me, right? Because it literally is, how much more do you know than the other person, right? How many more moves have you memorized than the other person, right? And yeah, that can be frustrating. But then you just like, you either don't play or you play another kind of chess. Maybe you play bullet chess or something, you know what I mean? Something that fits more that you want to do. If like the rotations you don't like in wuwa, okay, first of all, you don't have to do them. You don't have to play according to the rotations. You could play other teams that excite you more. You could play the other game modes that excite you more. Heck, you could just not play the fucking game and play a game that you actually prefer doing. If you prefer ZZZ combat, fine, good for you. I'm so happy for you. Go play it. Go play it. But to say that the wuwa combat doesn't feel as engaging enough, to say that it's a waste of time to actually participate in the mechanics that make the fights better, is wild. Yeah, ZZZ is better than wuwa because chess. Fuck me.
Wuthering Waves, Final Fantasy, and Genshin, in no small part thanks to their focus on cooldowns and timers. Those games that choose to restrict their combat so much or pigeonholed into rotations instead of flexible routes feel like boring, pretentious, pinky in the air. No, you can't wear those jeans here. Were you crazy? Classical chess. Because I more or less know what every fight is going to look like before it starts. It's just a matter of finishing it, and the challenge is almost more about your ability to repeat your rotation enough times to win. While on the other,
it's all about looking at what the bosses are doing too, and making sure that like you're equipped to deal with what they're about to throw at you. Are you gonna have to break them at a certain point? How am I gonna maximize my damage on them in certain scenarios? Obviously, if you're if you've got so many constellations, so many sequences and you're geared to the teeth, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But the average person might have mid character roles, mid whatever, and they're gonna have to like min-max a bit more. They're gonna have to be a bit more reactive to what the bosses are doing. Break them at certain times that are beneficial to them. They have to think about it a lot more and what the game is actually giving you. Of course, you can negate all that by pulling more and having better relics. That's the whole point of a gacha game at the end of the day, right? But to say that, like, it's the same every single time is a bit disingenuous.
On the other hand, Zenless is like Fisher Random, where I know how to play the game, I'm familiar with all the pieces, but every fight feels fresh to an extent, because the way the game is structured, you constantly have to adapt to your available resources as well as your opponent's behavior on the fly to succeed. Despite the game's flaws, though,
Your opponent's behavior on the fly, and you don't have to do that with wuwa. In fact, we've already established you have to do that more with wuwa, because you don't hear noise cues every time you have to fucking dodge in the game.
like I said at the top, I do like Wuthering Waves, and I actually think a lot of its hiccups are potentially kind of easy to address. Even just taking a page out of ZZZ's playbook where Concerto was concerned would do a lot to loosen up the combat variety and help the gameplay feel more cohesive. That's a story for next time though, because like
Huh? What? What's he saying?
flaws though, like I said at the top, I do like Wuthering Waves, and I actually think a lot of its hiccups are potentially kind of easy to address. Even just taking a page out of ZZZ's playbook where Concerto was concerned would do a lot to loosen up the
What does that mean? Wait, what do you mean by this? What is he saying? I'm not trying to be dumb. What is he actually trying to say about Concerto taking a leaf out of ZZZ's book? What are you saying? Huh? Huh? You want to select who gets swapped out? Nothing. I actually don't know what he means by this. Concerto should take a leaf out of ZZZ's book. I actually have no idea what he's trying to say by that.
combat variety and help the gameplay feel more cohesive. That's a story for next time though, because like I said, this is just the first of many discussions about the mechanics in both of these games, and I have so much to say about Concerto, we would easily be here for another 20 to 30 minutes, and don't even get me started on the ecosystem. So for now, all I'll say is...
Oh, I'll be real, I think the ecosystem could use some work. But I mean, like, in an UI standpoint, the ecosystem needs work. And I also think echo skills need a lot of work too. Why do we have echo skills on like 1 cost, 3 cost fucking echoes when we never fucking use them, right? More variety in that regard. Being able to maybe swap echo skills to other... I think more variety would be a good thing. That's a whole other conversation. And there are valid criticisms to make about the current ecosystem, sure. Ain't gonna rag on him for that.
Generally speaking,
I think he wants an option to swap without triggering outro, intro when your energy is full. I think the argument of losing certain buffs when you swap off of people is a valid criticism to make. I don't know if I necessarily agree with like being able to swap to like anybody.
reasonably confident that Wuthering Waves is comfortably on the road to success. 2.0 is a groundbreaking update, and if they manage to deliver something similar every 6 months or so like they have planned, it's only a matter of time before Wuthering Waves is a kind of unstoppable household name. But here's the thing, fun open worlds are a dime a dozen, while stylish character action...
Hey, at least he has a gold Stella around. Also, he's finding a level 75 Nightmare Permanence Heron. 75, by the way. Oh, excuse me, by the way.
combat remains to this day one of the most underserved...
Why not just swap before it's full? Like, that's what you're supposed to do.
genres of gaming. So it's happy and...
That's why we have the swap back. Right? I do that on my Jingyu 1, like, Verena Mortifi team. Like, before, like, I use the fallacy hands on, like, Verena. And before she's full Concerto, I will use my Mortifi first, do all his shit, use my Gion, Monkey, back to Mortifi, he's full, before he's full, I'll go back to Verena, use the fucking, the fallacy fucking echo, go to Mortifi, use his shit, outro, intro to fucking Gion, use everything. Like, it's a swap back, right? That's just part of it.
And impressed as I am to see them doing incredible things with the world of Wuthering Waves, I'm really hoping the combat mechanics continue to evolve in a similar way.
Sorry, Gion, not Jingyu. Sorry, I get my hot man confused. You know what I mean? It's my bad. My bad, guys.
Regardless if they do or don't though, I'll be here breaking down how things play out, because like I said, Zenless and Wuthering Waves are two of the best character action games in modern memory, and considering their current trajectory, I'd be surprised if they weren't mainstays for at least the next 5 to 10 years. And considering in so many ways they may as well be two branches of the same tree that just happen to sprout in different directions.
But bro doesn't like rotations? The swap back is inherently not like an intrinsic rotation. A lot of the times you do swap backs because it's not part of a quote unquote natural rotation, right? It's not part of a natural rotation. So it's something that actually you could do outside of those normal rotations that make the gameplay kind of more interesting. Like, if I min-max here by doing a swap back, I'm actually going to perform better. So even that goes against what, like, he's been saying about wuwa. Like, even that goes against what he's saying. Because swap back is not part of intrinsic rotations you'll think of inherently that's, like, maybe natural, right? You'll wait until you have Concerto, swap to the next character and play. That's how most people will play the game, right? Most people will play the game by, oh, Concerto, outros, intros, they'll do that. They won't think about swap backing. So, like, he's saying things that you can do in Woo. He's not mentioning those things that you can do. It's interesting.
Directions, they're the perfect head-to-head comparison to use as a vehicle for getting to the bottom of the little details, the small imperfections and overlooked master strokes that genuinely define what sets a good character action game apart from a truly great one. So stay tuned, because we're going to keep the conversation going in the next videos. I try to get to the bottom of not just whether ZZZ's combat feels.
By the way, this whole part was meant to be about cooldowns, and bro never told us a single cooldown that he thought would be good to cut or get rid of and why that would help the game.
Better than Wuthering, but why or why not? So maybe subscribe and let's find the answer together, because I would love to hear your thoughts too. What do you think? Am I cooking or am I crazy? How do you feel about the cooldowns and rotations? I'd genuinely like to know, because one of my favorite parts of making videos for all of you is the incredibly detailed, well thought out comments I get from people sharing their perspectives, even if you happen to disagree. I know the focus of the channel for quite some time has mainly been guides, and those aren't going away.
I know the grapple, but I mean like in combat. I'm not talking about grapple, I'm talking about in combat.
Guys, from a practical perspective, going into 2025, it is time to switch gears a bit. Largely because timing is beyond crucial when it comes to guides and the gacha space in particular, thanks in part to how straightforward these games are, plus the culture around early access content, and
actual combat cooldowns.
I'm not in a position where I have enough time to consistently make guides often enough to justify them being the main focus of the channel. I might go into more detail about precisely what this means for my content in the channel in an update video at some point, but the TLDR is, I'm effectively a caretaker for my grandparents, because, you know, as happens, they just hit that age a few years back where they needed a bit more help.
You go the soul mob buff where you get stats using the grapple.
Anyways, outside of like the occasional,
you don't need to watch the rest of it. Okay, so I'm gonna be so honest with this video, okay? I'm gonna be as nice as possible because I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to be a dick, right? But like, it really feels like the guy was saying a lot of things that ZZZ does that Wuthering Waves doesn't, not realizing that wuwa actually does those things. The whole push and pull thing, saying that the most outrageous thing, saying that dodging and parrying or fishing for parries is a waste of time in wuwa, is an insane, wild take to have that kind of disregards a lot of what he has to say about the combat on the game, right? It just does. It just kind of disregards it. I think he could have had a way more valid point by saying, hey, the way that the game plays in TOA versus in Overworld, the rotations feel very different, and it could feel more clunky in Overworld than it does in, like, TOA. That would be fine and valid to say. I think that would generally be fine. Or even in holograms, because of the whole, like, energy situation when you die. Again, I think a valid criticism to have and to make, right, with this game. But to approach it by initially being like, the main thing I want to talk about is cooldowns in wuwa are a bad thing, and yet never mention an actual combat cooldown apart from the fucking grapple. Never mentioning a single combat cooldown that, if reduced or gotten rid of, would make the game better. Not given any examples whatsoever. And instead, we're talking about push and pull and how, like, ZZZ feels more reactive to play because of its lack of cooldowns. Is like, what are we saying? What are we saying? When the enemies don't even really fight back as much as they do in wuwa, right? Where in wuwa, you have to dodge more than just by audio cues. What do we mean reactive? What do we mean push and pull? I feel like this would have been a much better video if he actually gave examples, okay? If he actually gave examples of what he was talking about. Hey, here's this skill. If this was cut in half or reduced, I think it would make this combat a lot more smoother. Okay, fair point. I'd agree. But instead we didn't. Oh, again, this is like the Jordan Peterson of gacha. This guy, Hatey Casual, is acting like the Jordan Peterson of fucking gacha, saying so many things but saying very little, and actually making comparisons that don't really make sense. I think it's perfectly fine. If you think Zenless of Zero has a better, more satisfying combat experience for you, fine. That's okay. Hey, enjoy your game, man. If you think it's more fun and more reactive because it's quicker, fast-paced, it's more like, I hear sound, I dodge, I do rotation, that's fine. Good for you. I'm happy. But to then say that wuwa isn't reactive, that dodging and parrying is a waste of time, what are we doing? Like, what are we actually saying in that regard? It's just being a bit disingenuous at best. And I don't want to do a say Totus, oh look at his B-roll, when your entire footage is you trying to hide the fact that you're fighting against like level 75 enemies that are red. It's a bit of a red flag, okay? A little bit of red flag. And I don't take anybody seriously who says parrying is a waste of time in wuwa. That just immediately makes me think, what are we doing? What are we saying? I think there's a lot of valid points that you could bring up, right? Buffs being lost on a swap is annoying, right? The energy system resetting in holograms is annoying. Very valid things to point out in wuwa, okay? Very valid things to point out. But like, a lot of these comparisons, like, while it's good to compare games to each other, we have to do it in good faith. And I think some of these comparisons weren't good faith. You know what I mean? It just wasn't. And I don't think that's fair. I don't want to shit on the guy and call him an idiot or whatever, but this did start to feel like a pretentious video as soon as bro whipped out the chess analogies. It's like, yeah, like every gacha that we play, we're gonna have our systems rotations that we get into. Do you know what we do? We play other fucking teams. Like, oh, I'm kind of bored of this now. I'm gonna main a new team. That's just how it works. In MMOs, we could play another class. We have to change how we play from single target to AoEs to 3+ targets. We have to change how we play. You know what I mean? Path of Exile, you only have one character to play. It makes sense you have different ways to play. And these gacha games, the whole point is that you collect more characters to build a variety of teams, to have a variety of playstyles. That's literally how we're supposed to play these games. I felt like I was being taught to instead of having a discussion with the guy. Yeah, it just feels like we're getting told that, like, oh, this is how it is, and actually, it's this way because of chess and Magnus Carlsen. I'll be real, people who like chess like that, I just find intrinsically are pretentious assholes. They think themselves so smart, like the smartest people in the fucking room. You know what I mean? Some points were okay. But overall, always try to be unbiased. He was so biased, it's unreal. Be taught to instead of watching a video. Yeah, I understand what you mean, Ethan. He was glizzy gobbling him for straight 10 minutes. Bro, it was crazy. Bro, Mystery K, no hot. Mystery K98 already knows he's a pretentious asshole. That guy min-maxes gacha games like it's crazy. Like, he knows he's the ultimate Giga Sweat nerd, right? I think he's already fully aware of it. I'm top 2% of chess and I'm a retard. Yeah, but we all know you're pretentious as fuck too, right? Like, you're the actually guy, like, even in chats. Like, you already know that that's you, right? Like, you're proving my point. You already know that's you. Like, we already know. It's proving my point, you know? The people who love chess and love gachas are the most pretentious, actually people retards, like, we know. Like, Mystery K98, he is proof of that. He's in everybody's chats being, actually, this is how it is. Like, it is true. Courtsy, he agrees. See, this is why he gets banned in people's chats and timed out. This is why he's called retard in other creators' chats, too. Like, he knows it. He knows it. Top 2% of retards. Yeah, exactly. Blood has a spreadsheet over his spreadsheets for every metric that can be imagined. Exactly. He's a natural fucking retard. But yeah, this is a very interesting video. I want to see what some of the comments are. You did not need 26 minutes to explain what ultimately boils down to personal preference. Ooh. I think you didn't play the game enough to explore the mechanics. I'm sorry to say it. Ooh. Dear. Oh, Mr. Jokey List. Oh, God. Did Saint react to this yesterday? Did Saint react to this? Every time I see Mr. Jokey, I just know they've been watching Saint Tontus. Did he react to this yesterday? That's so funny. You specifically target Wuwa about his enemies not being responsive enough. Yes, he did. Oh, that explains all the comments then from a day ago, right? That explains all the comments from a day ago. Yeah, all the Saint chatters are in his comments now. Yeah. Yeah, when I see Mr. Jokey, I know Saint's probably reacted to the video. Yep. They're all just using, yep. Alarming take for a game you can't jump. Skill issue. Try quick swapping clears in 30 seconds. That will show you the potential of Wuwa's combat. Bro thought he is cooking. Oh. Oh, video I kept my dodging or dungeon mains being like cooldowns, rotations, restrictions, parry. They really are built different. Ooh. This is a very interesting video. Very interesting video. Oh, wee. Yep. But yeah, bro was a little bit of a silly cunt. Unfortunately. Make your intro shorter next time. Try and give actual examples and reasoning with the things that you say, right? If we're talking about cooldowns, give an example of cooldowns, right? You can make this far shorter. You spent half the time with your intro, another part of the time talking about fucking cooldowns, and then another part talking about like parrying and dodging and push and pull factors. I mean, come on, right? Let's not be as fucking silly, right? Let's just not be a little bit silly, right? Maybe next, hey, if you want someone to proofread your scripts, come to me, okay? I will help you. I will help you proofread your scripts. I've done that for a couple of people before, right? I'm down. I will actually try and help you, right? Anyway, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this video down below. I'm live every day. Twitch.tv, Cabinetz in the pinned comments, right? I appreciate y'all, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.